parts of the Gospel on account of the fact that on Thursday we have a very big feast day, which is the Ascension of our Lord. And so that you might be aware of it beforehand, it would be good for you to ponder about these sorts of things. The first Gospel that we read was about a blind man, a person that was blind from birth. Now, probably I will repeat to you some of the things that I've said before on account of the fact that we have so many people, and it would be good for them to also share and know some of the sorts of things that we believe in and live in the Orthodox faith. The man that was born blind, as the Holy Fathers say, the Lord, being the Creator, created new eyes for him out of the clay, just as he created the first man out of the clay. He created new eyes and gave him new eyes to see. Of course, the Pharisees at that time, the Jewish leaders, did not want to accept this because it was something that was far beyond anything that they had ever witnessed or done or in any way experienced. And of course, envy and jealousy and hatred played a large part in this whole process. So much so that eventually they arranged it for Christ to be crucified. The second Gospel reading, which is for the feast day this Thursday, is the Ascension of our Lord. Because after our Lord's resurrection, he spent 40 days with his disciples. And as I've said to you on numerous occasions during these 40 days, he essentially opened up their understanding about the true faith. The understanding of the Old Testament, the understanding of the things that were and the things that would be. And he also blessed them and gave them power to be able to do such things as heal others, expel evil, demons, all those sorts of things. And these disciples became the first bishops of the church, after which followed a whole progression of bishops, and every priest, every bishop, every person that is ordained is able to trace their lineage back to one of the apostles. And if they can't, that means that they are not part of the true church. That's one of the indicators of whether we belong to Christ and to his church and to his ways or not. Because anybody could put on vestments and make a show and do all these sorts of things, and start pretending that they're something special, when in fact they are only self-proclaimed but do not carry the grace that has been handed down from Christ through the apostles, the apostolic fathers, right down the Holy Fathers to this day, and will continue to be like that. For the benefit of those who are new here, wanted to also briefly expound to you something which is going to become more and more common in your life once you are baptized, or those that are baptized already. Yesterday we had the pleasure of seeing my godson for the first time in many years, who was a monk from Mount Athos for 10 years. He was on Mount Athos. He's in Melbourne at the moment, and we went and spoke with him on various topics. During this time, there were periods when we waited for other people to come, and my godson was staying at the Windsor Hotel, which is that famous hotel on Spring Street near Parliament House, which surprisingly was extremely cheap, either because they can't find enough people to take up rooms or something to that effect, or he had some special deals because of his many travels and frequent flyings and all those sorts of things. And the doorman there, very tall man, started to have a conversation with me because I had normal vestment that a priest would wear when he would go out into the public. And basically what he said was similar to what many people believe about Orthodoxy. First of all, he attached a nationalistic name to it. He said, "Oh, Russian Orthodox." Russian Orthodox. Does it really matter what language you serve in? In Alaska, they serve in Aleutian, an Eskimo language. So the nationalistic part is really quite irrelevant. It's the services and the prayers and the spiritual life and all those sorts of things that are important, and not so much the language. I asked him, in what language was the Bible written? Because this was, we were talking about the time before Christ, about the Old Testament. And he said, Aramaic. I said, no. And then he said, Hebrew. I said, no. And he couldn't give me an answer, so I said it was written in Greek, which floored him quite a bit. And it was. The Old Testament was written in Greek about 300 years before Christ came to earth. From its Hebrew sources, it was fixed up on account of many errors, and because Greek became the language of the world in that time, just as English is the language of the world today. You know, after that period, Latin became the language of the world, and etc., as we have today, to English. He wanted to know certain things, and we have a name for this sort of process, which most of you that have heard me talk before know. Call it having a missionary conversation. In other words, somebody who is interested in the faith, but is not of the faith, comes and asks you questions, and it is your duty to give them answers, good answers, answers that are going to inspire them and possibly fix something up that bothers them. This is why we put so much emphasis on reading and studying, because where else are you going to get your information from? For 40 days, our Lord was with his apostles and he taught them. He taught them. And they absorbed that. And it was only later on that people started to write these things down and to put them into some sort of systemized form, because the word that people spoke was far more important than what was written. When something is written, it is already on a lower level than when it is spoken in truth from the heart. I told him that Orthodoxy is not a religion as such. They also floored him somewhat. But rather that it is the revelation of God about the truth of things. All of us, I am pretty sure, have had moments in our life when we have searched for the truth of things about something. Sometimes to the point of anger. I want to know, I can't find out, and I do almost anything to find out. One such person that we had quite a lot of dealings with was Father Seraphim Rose, whose some of the books we have there we put out for you because we have some new copies of them. The two there are Orthodoxy and Religion of the Future, which talks about the Orthodox faith, where it stands, where it's going, and what's going to happen in the future. Because there are many, many things happening right now in our lifetime which you need to be aware of. And the other one is also of great importance, maybe to many of us of even more importance, the soul after death. What happens when a person dies? What happens to them? Father Seraphim Rose